everyone. Good morning. Good to see you here. We got the audio going. Everything is good. Logging in here. How's everyone doing? Good to see you. Cameron, Sarah, Caroline. We're going to do some homework. I'm going to send out an announcement, try to get a bunch of people in here because today is going to be a super productive office hours, even though we got started just a few minutes late. Good morning, William. Let's wake up MewBot right here. I need to add MewBot back into this universe. He needs to exist. It just delete me out of existence right there. I don't know. We are missing Aaron, big sad right there. Well, let's wait a second, then we'll give out the points to see if we can get Aaron here. So let's say office hours currently going chapter 10. Who wants to do some chapter 10, like do all the chapter 10 homework? Office hours, big help, chapter 10. Okay, we are going to do lots of the homework and quiz today. Join in. Join in. Here we go right here. And click here. And thank you so much to our office hours crew right here. We got the link right there. Make sure it works. You might hear me in the background. There we go. It sounds a little, the audio sounds a little echoey. I need to work on the audio. It's good. Things can always be better. So I'm always trying to make the audio sound perfect. But perfect is relative, right? I'm thinking, is my GoXLR doing the mixing? Let me look at this really briefly right here. It should be doing all the mixing. It is doing all that. I feel like it's not mixing the same as it used to. Well, let's do some assignments. Let's throw out a big 5,000 points. It sounds good right now? Good. I like that. A big 5,000 points for being here for office hours. And let's go to my Pearson. Should we do the homework or the quiz first? Should we do the homework or the quiz first? Thank you so much to office hours people right here. Remind me later. If you're working on the homework or the quiz, we're gonna get a lot done. You'll see why. You'll be like, oh my gosh, how will we get that much done that fast? So chapter 10, what do you need to ace chapter 10 right here? What do you need to ace chapter 10? What's gonna be essential to acing chapter 10 right here? An essential thing to acing chapter 10 will be making what's. So an essential thing, flashcards. Great job right there, Valeria. Excellent work. Flashcards are going to be essential. Know the definitions. And you'll see that as we work on the homework here. I'm going to do something you rarely to never ever see me will do, because chapter 10 is a very tricky chapter. So the way we're going to do chapter 10, we're going to do the following. Let's start with chapter 10, problem 1. Let's do it. Okay, we got chapter 10, problem 1 on the screen. Let me mark the time in the video. You're gonna get hundreds. So good to see you here, Jennifer. Good morning, Hannah. We'll throw out some more points in a second right here. Here's some points. Chapter 10, problem 1, or homework question 1. Okay, so what matters about a sample you draw from, oh my gosh, class over. There we go. I didn't even look at the previous screen. What matters most about the sample you draw? Good to see you, Olivia. What matters most? Now, there's two things that really matter, and this comes from a slide you did. One of them is on the screen. What is the other thing? So it's not the fraction of the population you sample. You can get the same understanding with 10% of Knoxville as you could, well, 100 people from Knoxville as you could 100 people from Tennessee. Good to see you here, Rebecca. So you could get the same understandings. Yes, Sarah, excellent answers. Size of the sample, and if it's representative of the population. And Cameron says a good way to get a representative sample is to take a random sample. So good to see you, Michael. We got tons of people here. So is it representative, and what size did you take? A good, large representative sample. So that's what a good sample would be, a large representative sample. So it's the size that matters, it's not the fraction you sample. There is some interesting stuff we'll get into later about percent you take and things like that. But that's the first one. Question 1, it's gone. So now let's move on here to the next question. Chapter 10, homework question 2. So the next one right here is the following. The president, good to see you here, Aaron. Aaron's here yet. The president of the university plans a speech to an alumni group. He plans to talk about the proportion of students who responded in the survey that they are the first in their family to attend college first year, first gen. But the first draft of his speech treats that proportion as the actual proportion of current students who are the first in their families to attend college. Explain to the president the difference between the proportion of respondents who are first attendees and the proportion of the entire student body that are first attendees. I'll use appropriate statistics in this terminology. So what are they trying to illustrate to you here? What is the goal of this question? What is the goal? To differentiate between SSPP. So what am I trying to tell you? You'll see the screen here in a second. We're trying to differentiate between SSPP. Word loading? Word has loaded. We're trying to differentiate between SSPP. What do I mean by that? I say SSPP. What does that mean? The goal of this is to differentiate between sample statistics and population parameters. So a sample statistic is drawn from a sample size. So you'll always get like something like n equals to 100, like we took 100 sample, and is an estimate of the truth for the full population. For the full population. The population parameter is going to be the truth for the whole population. So this might be something like capital N equals 20,000. That means there's 20,000 people we want to understand. Great job, all those things. Emma, Jennifer, Cameron, Sarah, William, Cameron. Again, great work. The full population size, the truth for the whole population, and what we, the thing we want, and what we want to understand. The truth, what we want to understand for the whole population. So it just means parameter, the thing we want to understand for the population, and that's what parameter is used for. It's for populations. Now, why do we call it inferential statistics? So think here why it's called inferential statistics. Because what's the deal? You got statistics, and right here, inferential statistics. You are allowed to estimate or infer the truth for a population from the statistics. Does that make sense right here? You can infer things from statistics about populations, make educated guesses. So statistics allow us to make inferences about populations. Statistics come from samples. So what the president has done is the president of this university has a what group of students? The president took a what group of students? Don't worry about their answers. You'll see the right answer. But the president took a what? And it says survey right there. They took a sample. So they should say we have an estimate of the truth, right? They should say, this is what we think the truth might be. But the problem is they're talking about it like it's a population parameter. So they're saying, here's what the truth is. Does that make sense? Because they have a survey, which is a sample, which allows them to estimate the truth. That's what actually happened. But they're going to talk about it mistakenly like, we know the truth for our students. It's a fact that this percent is this. But that's not the truth. They only have estimates. So they only have educated guesses about the truth is, and let's look for the answer that says that. The proportion of students who respond in this survey that are first generation to attend college is a statistic because it came from a survey. So a survey would give us a statistic because it's a sample. The proportion of all students that attend first in their family to attend college is a parameter because the proportion of all students, the population, so all students would refer to the population and the population has a parameter. The statistic estimates the parameter, exactly what we said, but is not likely to be exactly the same. And there's the answer. Does that make sense? This whole question is knowing what a sample statistic is versus a population parameter, and statistics allow us to make inferences into the population. I'm doing a little different way to do this because I want you to have these terms. You see me write down a lot of terms today, but this is a really good review of Chapter 10 if we do it this way, and it focuses more on what the test will look like than getting answers to my Pearson, which you will still get if you're here. Any questions right now? We should have hundreds on both those first two questions because the homework's the same for everyone. We get to question number 3. I'm trying to go quickly-ish, but I also want you to, because I don't want someone to just skim through and get the answers, which is possible, I want you to also kind of hear the questions and understand and write down the terms. So, well, someone already has this already answered, but let's see. The company's annual report states, Our survey shows, survey, so is this a sample or a population? Our survey shows. We did some internal surveying and it shows that 87.6% of employees are very happy working here. That's a sample. So here's the issue too. What kind of bias might there be? And so now we're covering bias a little bit with this question. What kind of bias might there be asking people, are you happy working here? Like, let's say the boss says, I sampled people by walking around and asking people, are you happy working here? Are you? And they're like, yeah. What kind of bias could there be? And there's a lot of ways to think about the bias possible, especially if you just walk around, because that implies one. Well, it's not anonymous. And so we have different types of biases. Good answer, Michael, right there. Throw some points. We've got response bias, non-response bias, voluntary bias, convenience bias, and undercoverage bias. They wouldn't want to show unhappiness to their bias. So response bias, the bias in the response. The boss is like, hey, the company's great. You love working here, right? That's a really good response bias way to phrase the question. Did everyone hear that? A really good example of response bias would be a boss being like, hey, the company's great. You love working here, right? Right? That's response bias. Voluntary bias could be in play because people who like working there might be more likely to respond, and also people who don't like working there might be less or more likely to respond too. The people who are meh are not going to respond as much, so voluntary. Convenience, that's what I was going for walking around. Great job, Caroline, right there. If you're walking around and just getting the people you see, that's a convenient bias right there. So convenience bias by just getting the people easiest to talk to. And then I don't know if there would really be non-response. Maybe you could say undercoverage. Maybe people, if they sent it out via email, or people who weren't working that day, like people who work from home. If the boss walks around the internal company, you could say you undercover people who work from home. You'd be like, everyone loves working here. But they didn't speak to the people who work from home or didn't pull any of those. So they undercovered people who have a different modality. Does that make sense right here? We kind of brought bias into this to review those terms. Non-response is when people who don't respond differ in their response than people who do. Response bias is when the biases in the response often attributed to the way the question is asked. Voluntary bias is when people who volunteer have stronger opinions. Convenience bias, good to see you, Roto. Hey, we're going to get those sounds back for you here soon. Convenience bias is when you do it in a convenient way, like putting it on the web or reaching out to people who are easiest to access. And I think I'm forgetting one more. Which one did I forget? There's 5. I think I might have said them all. Convenience, voluntary, non-response, response, and undercoverage. So voluntary, when people who volunteer their opinions differ than those or have stronger opinions, like people who volunteer are likely to have stronger opinions. And once again, we said that this is a statistic. It's the same question as kind of the last one. It estimates the truth for a population. So make sure to check out the notes we took previously, where statistics are used to make inferences about a population, and the statistic could be from a sample. One more question down. Here we go with another one trying to illustrate to us, and the homework's a bit easier. We're going to get hundreds on the homework pretty quickly right here. Okay, you are trying to find the amount of financial aid students at your university receive. You sample 50. So very clearly, when you hear sample, you think what 2 letters? If you hear you took a sample, then you hear what 2 letters in your head? This is good review and memorization, but when you hear you took a sample, you think sample statistics. So you would never say sample parameters or population statistics. It goes sample statistics, population parameters, more points in the chat right there, and good practice. And then you have to think, well, what is a sample statistic? A sample is a subset of individuals from a population, like we sample, like you sample the cake and take a slice of it. It's a subset of the whole cake. And then the statistic is what you learn from it to make an estimate about the whole cake. I've loved talking about cake, sample the cake to understand the whole cake and how tasty it is. So you have a guess of how tasty it is. That would be your statistic. Your statistic is the guess of how tasty it is from the sample of how good of like the portion of cake you took. You're trying to understand the whole cake, which is the population, and the tastiness of the whole cake is the parameter, the thing you want to understand. So you make an inference from your sample of the cake. So I had some tasty pumpkin bread. It's really good. Good stuff right there. Well, kind of the same topic, so I don't think we need to go more in depth on it. People having fun rocking and rolling through this quiz or homework? It's a little bit of a longer one, but we are making good time on it. We'll get to some of the quiz questions, which are pretty
scary.
Hopefully that was my scary voice. Hopefully. Okay. You are doing a study for a oh no, Oh, no.
Oh no.
You are doing a study for a nonprofit group helping at-risk children in your city. Suppose you know. So it says you know this. So if you know something, you know the what. Think of a T word. If you know something, if I say it is a fact that 14.2% of people are in poverty, that is the truth. And whatever the truth is, you say, we've done extensive research on this. We know, because we have incomes and all these different things, we know for a fact. So which one of these things is a fact about everybody? Which one of these things is the fact about everybody? The population parameter. Great job, Abigail, right there. The PP, the population parameter, is the fact for everybody. And so very clearly, this is a population parameter because you know it and it's the truth. No sample was talked about here. Look at the previous question where a sample was talked about, even the sample size. This one does not mention a sample. It just says, like, you know for a fact. I wish I'd put in fact in there, but it's like, this is the truth. You know this. So that is the truth for the whole population, which is what a parameter is. The parameter is just some quality or thing we want to understand for a group of interest known as a population. I will say this, sometimes it's called population parameter of interest. Of interest is just extra words like the thing you want to understand. So if you're here, population parameter of interest, all we're talking about is parameter, or sometimes people say population of interest. That's just the group you want to understand. So nothing too crazy out there. Another question down, and here we are with the next one. Moving good. Okay. A company hoping to assess employee satisfaction surveys, so they're taking a sample, employees by assigning computer-generated random numbers to each employee on a list of all employees, and then contacting all those who assigned random numbers is divisible by 22. I mean, that's a lot of work. Okay, so let me ask you this, but don't even read their answers. Is there any reason that an employee would be more or less likely to be surveyed? So what we've done is, I might need to go over here to R, or we just generate random numbers, and we then only contact the employees who have a number divisible by 22. So everyone would have an equal and likely chance to be picked. It's just random. So like you get a random number, and then you could just select the first, like you could just order the numbers and select the first 50. That's usually what we do. We don't usually pick those divided by 22, or I guess, I mean, sure, if it's divisible by 22, that's a fun way of doing it. But if you can just put random numbers and then order them and select the first 50 because numbers are random, so the order is randomized. So this is definitely a random sample because every employee has a what chance of being picked. Every employee has a what chance of being picked right now. And that's what a good random sample will do. It'd be representative because every employee has an equal and likely chance of being picked. And that's what's going to make it random sample very clearly right here. And there's no reason like each employee would be independent of other employees being selected. Like if I work on a team, just because I was picked, people on my team would have the same probability of me being picked. It's not that if someone is picked, they would increase or decrease the probability of others being picked. Independent means it does not impact the probability of something else. So Brian being picked for this survey would not impact the probability of someone else being picked. So everyone's picked for this survey is completely and utterly. Randomness is very important for doing surveys. Very, very, very important. Now we get to administrators at Texas A&M University. You're following me. Texas A&M, where you at? Oh my gosh. I think they're angry about Saturday. I mean, we tried to give them some hope. Ooh, what's an Aggie? Say gig'em. Say, if you say howdy in the chat, Mubot will say gig'em to you. So if you say howdy, Mubot will say gig'em and then your name. That's what they say down there. They say gig'em. So it's something to do with frogs. I don't know. I don't know. I like Vols help Vols and stuff. Good stuff here at Tennessee. And Texas A&M, all right. HEB, shout outs to HEB. Oh, we probably will be doing that soon here, Caroline. If you hang out, and if I don't say it by the end, we'll do it right here. Ooh, we got one to differentiate right here. So select several dormitories at random and contact everyone living in the selected dorms. So I think we might have this from, oh no, did I close off the notes? So here's the steps. Let's write this down. You ready? When you do a cluster sample, what is step 1 of a cluster sample? Have these written down, put them on flashcards, know the things for each, because people, I swear it's a 50-50 guess for people in between cluster and stratified. What's the steps for cluster sampling? Any thoughts? This is where we ended last class. Put things into groups randomly. So put things into groups randomly. Very key right there. Well, we'll put step 1 right here. So step 1, put things into group randomly. Step 2, randomly select the groups. Step 3, perform a... So what's the last step right here? Ooh, William got it. More points for William right there. Perform a census by taking all of them right there. Step 1, put things into groups randomly. Randomly select the clusters. Perform a... Man, is that exactly what I wrote last time, Valeria? We got through Valeria 1,000 points right there. Please tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I want to make sure I get everything right. But that's maybe what I wrote last time. It's what I'm writing this time. Just doing it from memory. It's what I've got memorized. And this is the #1 way right here to do it. We perform a census on the groups, which means you take everything in those groups. So imagine you walk into a room and there's 100 bags of candy you've never tried. 100 bags of candy you've never tried. And you're really hungry. So you want to know if this candy is good or not. So would you open up all the bags, spread out all the candy across the ground, and randomly take some pieces of candy? And let's say it's like different fruit flavor candy. So you could do that. That'd be a simple random sample. Like open up all the bags, dump it out across the ground, and just randomly take the candy. That'd be a simple random sample if you could somehow randomly do it, number all the candies, and then take them. What would be a better way if there's 100 bags of candy on the ground in this room? There's 100 bags of candy on the ground in this room. 100 bags. Instead of dumping them all out. Yeah, no worries, Sarah. Good to have you here. What's a better way than just you open them all up, dump them all out, and randomly select different pieces of candy at random? Well, and Morgan's got it right there. They are in groups. The clusters are the whats of the candy right now. Because you could eat maybe 100 pieces of candy. So maybe there's total right now, the population of candy right now is 5,000 pieces of candy across these 100 bags. The bags are the clusters. So now, the things have been, do you think the candy company purposely puts the bad candy in certain bags? Like all their defective candy pieces are in certain bags? Or do you think the candy you get in the bag is kind of random? Like you might have a piece that's a little bit like misshapen or something. I'd say the candy is pretty randomly assigned to a bag. So then you randomly pick some of the bags. Maybe you pick 3 bags of candy. And then you're going to do what to every piece of candy in that bag? You're going to do what to test it to see how good it is and give some ratings. So you got 5,000 pieces of candy across 100 bags. So this is 100 bags down here. You're going to select 3 bags at random. You're going to do a census, sample all of them. A census means you're going to eat every piece of candy. Eat all of it. Oh no, there's not 5,000 in each bag. There's a total of 5,000 candies across 100 bags, so there's 50 pieces of candy in each bag. So you're going to eat 100 and put your sweet tooth through the test. So the big thing right here, and we'll talk about how stratified is a little bit different because we might get a stratified one. And let's look at how this question kind of conforms to this idea right here. I wish so too. That'd be like a huge bag of candy. Yeah. So right here, select several dormitories at random. Contact everyone. By contacting everyone, you are doing a what? Contacting everyone means you are doing a what of that dorm. Think of the word we just talked about, and it's the third part of doing a cluster, and it will be included. Sometimes we literally write that out, a census. You're doing a census of each dorm, and there you go right there. Yeah, so that is cluster. Using computer-based, select 200 sophomores, 200 freshmen, 200 juniors, 200 seniors. And this question is great because stratified. So in stratified, acknowledge step by step, acknowledge differences between your population. Step 2, sample in accordance to that difference, respective to group sizes. Okay, really all it is right there, sample randomly, or we'll put sample randomly. Okay, so the dorms aren't the strata though. In the previous one, the dorms are the clusters. Now think about this. Let's compare this. You ready? Good answers, camera right here, because that's usually where people get confused. Think about in the previous one we had dorms, right? And here's all the dorms. And this one we'll put here as green for stratified. And the previous one was cluster. So now we have class level over here. And so now the way this looks different is when you cluster sample, so we'll put cluster as we'll make sure people know we're talking about cluster right now. When you do a cluster sample, you select random clusters and do a what on them? Kind of, Cameron, on the right track right there. When you do clusters, and good work, Cameron, keep working away at it, you got this. When you do clusters, you select random clusters and do a census. But on this class level thing, we're taking how many from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So we'll put an F for freshman right there, sophomore, junior, senior. You're taking how many from each of these? How many are you taking from each of these? How many did it say we're taking from each of these? Well, and so we'll never use the word cluster with stratified though. So that's the key thing. Clusters are when things are put together in a nice group for you to just take them all. But when you stratify, they're not randomly assigned. Is it random that someone is a senior? Is it just random, like every student has the same random probability of being a senior as they do a freshman? Is that just randomness that makes you a senior or freshman? No, that's not randomness. The candy or the dormitories, is it kind of random how you're assigned to dormitories? Like a little bit. I know you can select rooms and stuff, but is there a little more randomness to the assignment of dormitories? A little more randomness. Like a little bit like you might just be assigned to a dorm at random. There's more randomness. So over here, there's a random assignment. And the strata are not random. They're differences that we are acknowledging, and you often use this to stop under coverage. So the big thing with stratified is you're saying, we want to make sure we have enough freshmen. We want to make sure we have enough sophomores, juniors, seniors. The reason you do clustering is to speed up the process and say, let's just go to this dorm and get everybody, a whole cluster at once. The reason you do stratified is to say, we don't want to have too few freshmen. We don't want to have too few sophomores or too many. Under coverage is too few. Over coverage would be too many, which is still a problem. Does that make sense? Stratified, you have to start by acknowledging a difference between your in your population, between your population, and then from there we sample within the differences representative to the size. Like if there's only 20% freshmen, 20% of your sample would be freshmen. If there's 30% sophomore, 30% of your sample would be sophomore. So you use the population parameter to define how much you sample. Think about this, UT wants to understand parking. So here, I'll write this out at the bottom here so you can see it as I say it. UT wants to understand parking and the view of students. They talk to 2,000 students. Do you think they should do cluster or stratified based on commuter / non-commuter? Okay, do you think they should do cluster or stratify? Do you think we would call it a cluster or stratifying? So they want to talk to students. So it would be stratified, because this is a difference we're going to acknowledge. Yeah, so it's going to be stratified, and great work right there, because then we're going to sample within those groups. So to visually draw it out, you might have right here that commuters are 30% of the population, and non-commuters, I might have it off here, it's not what I do at UT, is this. So if that is the population, what amount of our sample Nice job, Sarah. And we'll have this recorded for later. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. What percent of our sample would be, or what, well, you could say percent. What percent of our sample would be commuters? So just think, if 30% of people commute to campus, what percent of our sample would be commuters? Might have it reversed. If 30% are commuters, what percent of our sample should be commuters? Because UT probably knows this, 30%. So if we sample 2,000 people, that is the total size, then what amount of commuters should we get? And this is why you stratify right here to not over or under cover any group. So what amount would we get? So if 30% is what the population has, we sample 2,000. So now we would get a sample size of, well, 30% is correct, 600, because that would be, yep. So we time this by 30%, and you would get a sample size of 600. So that'd be 600 here. And then this over here would be 1,400. Does that make sense? So now you've properly represented and not over or under covered any group right there. And the reason we wouldn't cluster sample is because if you cluster sampled, you only really have two groups, right? So would it make sense to do a cluster on commuter, a non-commuter? Because that would mean you would probably be taking all commuters or all not commuters, because someone being a commuter or not commuter is not a what assignment. So someone being a commuter or not commuter is not a what assignment. Someone being a commuter or not commuter is not a random assignment. It's a difference within the population that we want to sample with respect to. So they weren't randomly assigned commuter or not commuter. Kira, good to see you here. Kira. And so does that make more sense? This is one of the hardest topics. We slow down on the big important stuff, do a lot of examples. You do get to see the answers today because I really wanted to do a lot of lecturing right here. So that's a big one, and that is stratified. And then next right here, a computer-based algorithm is used to select the first 25 names on the list at random and then contact the student whose name is 50 names later. Oh, select one of the first 25 names. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. So they perfectly are doing this. This is the perfect way of doing this. I'll write down the steps for this one. As you see, I haven't seen the answer yet, but I know exactly what this is. Does anyone already know what it is for 1,000 points? They're going to contact a random student within the first 25 names. I've got the points ready to go. So they're contacting a random student within the first 25 names and then contacting every 50th student after. It is random, and Olivia got right there, it's systematic. And systematic is a type of random sampling, but it's systematic, every kth observation. So systematic is going to have step one, pick a random starting point. And step two, select every kth observation. Going forward. There we go. That is because every kth is systematic. It's not quite multi-stage because it has within systematic to choose a random starting point. You have to have somewhere to start. You don't want to start at the first every time, so you pick a random starting point. You could limit the window, but that is systematic. They almost had me thinking it was multi-stage, but that is systematic. I'll start class probably with some multi-stage examples, but there's a billion ways to go with multi-stage because it's like making a combo at Burger King or something. You can have it your way. At Burger King? Okay, next question, then we'll keep going. We were a long time on that question. That was a big one because we had to do some definitions. All right, chapter 10, homework, question 8. Brian always comes to office hours hungry, even though I had a big breakfast. I don't know, probably, yes, that's Burger King. So right here, when you sample so that every combination of individuals in your population has an equal chance of being taken, that is a simple random sample. To be very specific right here, the steps for simple random sample are as follows. We'll write them down after systematic. So simple random sample. The steps for simple random sample are, step one, everything in the population gets a number. Step two, randomly pick things by number. Randomly pick numbers. So you're just going to randomly select things, and that is simple random sample. Everything gets enumerated. Enumerated is a great word right there. We're through another 1,000 points. Enumerated means everything gets a number. I just start saying number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and then randomly pick those numbers. Or you could random assign numbers and then just pick the first 50. But it's basically everything has an equal and likely chance of being selected. You're not doing clusters, or you're not stratifying, you're not selecting every kth observation, but that is a random sample right there, enumerated, good word right there, everything gets a number. It makes it so everything has an equal and likely chance of being selected. Pretty easy question right there. They are doing a stratified here again because they're acknowledging differences between what right here. So once again, stratified acknowledges differences and then samples in accordance to those differences. You want to see that a difference was acknowledged, and then classes. Now think about why clustering would be a bad idea right here. Why would clustering be a bad idea? Because if you clustered on freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, there's two problems with this. Why would clustering, if you know the steps of clustering, what needs to be done, they're already grouped that, like, it's not randomly assigned, right? It's not, you're not randomly a freshman, you're not randomly a junior, not randomly a sophomore. They're already, they're not random assignments. And then the last thing, what is the last step of cluster sampling? To take clusters and do a what on those clusters. So if we did class level as clusters, you'd have to do what at the end? So they're not randomly assigned, so we'd then select random groups, and then we'd do a census. So could you imagine what your sample would look like? Imagine you took 2 clusters at random. If you took 2 clusters at random, tell me a theoretical thing that you'd get in your sample. If you did freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and you took 2 clusters at random, you could see that right there. This is not a good way of doing it. What would you get, maybe? Only freshmen and sophomores. Here, I'll draw what that looks like. Exactly. You'd have like a non-representative sample because they're not randomly assigned to these groups right here. So William, another 1,000 points. Amazing answers today. And so that's not what you should do. You would not have a representative sample of what it looks like because these groups are not randomly assigned. They already have an inherent difference, and you should acknowledge those differences in the population and do stratified sampling. And stratified sampling will acknowledge it right here and sample within the strata because these groups are not random right here. They are differences that you're acknowledging to say, these are differences. Does anyone feel like they have a much stronger understanding of what stratified is and cluster is? I know they both deal with groups, but these examples right here, like when would you stratify, when would you cluster, and what do the answers look like? Exactly. And I'm hoping on this year on the test, it's not like a 50-50 guess, because I've literally seen where like we have a stratified cluster and then everyone's like, I don't know. And I'm like, no. Because one time I did like a 30-minute video on it and people still got it wrong. I was like, oh, come on, no. Okay, we got some bias ones here. Who can list off all the biases for 5,000 points? Well, I put the time tag in here. Who's got all the biases listed? And then we'll be using them right here as we go through this. Try to list all of them. The Aggies, they're back. Oh my gosh. So, and are you having fun? Are you not entertained? I haven't seen, last time I saw Gladiator was in theaters 23 years ago. Response, non-response, convenience, voluntary, and undercoverage. Great job. Excellent work. Let's throw those 5,000 points in undercoverage. Good job right there, and then have your definitions for each, and let's try to identify them, and we will make this clear on the test. And we oftentimes, if we don't make one clear, we'll debate it, but we look to see what students get wrong, get right, and we make sure our questions are where students are getting them right, who we can tell would be getting them right. We do a lot of analysis of our results. If you're wondering how, I can go into detail of a discriminant analysis, I think it's called. Publish an advertisement inviting students to a website and answer their questions. Now, this could also be, and this is where I get a little bit mad, because what they're suggesting by saying this is voluntary bias is people with the what are opinions are going to go to this website. By saying it's voluntary response bias, they're saying people with the what are opinions. I think it's also a little bit of convenience. Exactly. So I don't love this as a test question, hence why I'm showing these right here so we can focus more on the terminology. Not a perfect test question because I would remove convenience and I would change this to something like response bias. So I would pick voluntary if that was response bias, because I'd be like, well, you're going to get voluntary bias of people with stronger opinions. Set up a table in the student unions and ask students to drop by to do the survey. Now that, I think, is where they're going for what? Set up a table that's just nice and easy and just sit back and relax and be like, hey, we're just out here today, and if you swing by, we'll let you answer That sounds like convenience to me. The other one in there, it is convenience. I sometimes say volunteers are convenient, and it's convenient to have volunteers. So you kind of run into this problem. You might also say here that the people with the stronger opinions would probably walk up to the table. So you can kind of see how it goes either way, but we will make it clear on the test. You won't usually have to pick between convenience and voluntary, or we'll make it super clear. Like, I think a really good one is restaurants with survey cards. So who's going to reply to restaurant survey cards on a table? So if you we used to at Cheddar's put a survey card on every table, and who's going to reply to that? That's a good example of this. This is a good example of what? People who love or hate it, and those are the strong opinions, voluntary bias. How about if Instagram allowed you to poll your friends and you ask them who they're voting for president? You're welcome, Hannah, right there. If your Instagram allowed you to poll your friends and you ask them who they're voting for president, that would be a what sample right there and suffer from this bias. So if you went and just polled your friends on who they're voting for president, that's convenient right there. You might say, but my friends with stronger opinions will respond. It's, yeah, there's some voluntary bias too, but the way you're doing the sampling is really convenient because you're just putting it to an internet thing that's, yeah. So that's going to be more of a convenient right there. The thing on restaurant tables is much more voluntary. They do kind of lend a little bit, but I tried to do what I think are the perfect examples. And that's it. I guess they're just trying to differentiate those two. And yeah, comment cards are usually the like restaurant stuff. Well, I want to do you want to do the PTA ones? One of my favorite ones. So we should have hundreds. I've still got a 0 on the homework, but you should have 100 on the homework. Let's go do a quiz question or two. Who's got that 100 on that homework? Homework 100 already done. 100 on the homework. I love cheddar so much. It is so good. Go get the Santa Fe spinach dip. You know what? I could go. Did we not? We got cheese last time. We got the fried cheese when we were there. It was good. The fried cheese is greasy. I'll say that. I I'd break out zits right after. Get the Santa Fe spinach dip and the Key West chicken and shrimp with broccoli cheddar and the red beans and rice. There's your order right there. The Monte Cristo, oh my gosh, this deep fried sandwich is so good. My suggestion is get the Santa Fe spinach dip to start, and split that with somebody. You could get the Santa Fe spinach dip, split that, then split the Key West chicken and shrimp with red beans and rice and broccoli casserole. And get some garlic rolls too. Get an order of 3 garlic butter rolls to go with your dinner. And then, I don't know the desserts these days. Oh, the Cookie Monster. They still call it the Cookie Monster? They might get in trouble for that, but just call it the Cookie Monster. And if they don't know, just ask for a manager and be like, we need the thing formerly called the Cookie Monster. I know, right? Making me hungry too. We need the dessert formerly known as the Cookie Monster. The dessert called the Millionaire. Who said anything about splitting that? They can just split the check. Maybe they get full and you can Cookie Monster right there. Oh man. I could do, you know what? Here, while we're getting ready, we'll do one more question here. But Cameron, this is for you. You're getting a new alert here, Cameron. Watch this. If someone says cookie in the chat from now on, if anyone says cookie, go ahead and let's test it. New alert. Does it work? Oh no, the little monster dude, he doesn't do it. Face fuchsia tongue. It's let me retry changing it right here. Darn it. This is what we're spinning office hours doing. Very important. Where'd it go? It won't let me copy that face into MuBot. Data Analytics 5, we might have just enough time. We'll put cookies instead for cookie. We unfortunately don't have the monster, but there you go, there's cookie. Cookie now works. Might be because of the YouTube emoji. Yeah, it allows me to take a lot of different emojis, but apparently that one, no. Data Analytics 5, we probably don't have enough time to do that. Let me show you where to go for Data Analytics 5, which I think covers it. Has anyone used the data analytics playlist? I might just do some cleanup here because we did the full homework. So I'll show you where to go. Visualization playlist. Okay. Who's been using? It's good. I like that right there. That's good news. Let's hover the main screen. Okay. So regression right here. Go. QQ straight enough. No outliers. Plot doesn't thicken. Brian looking really crazy. I have, but it is a little different for this one. Which one? Which part are you wondering about? Which part are you wondering about? Ask any questions right now. Let's put this to the visualization right here. We'll make that the thing for this moment. Okay, so we're at 46, 13, visualization 5. The only thing he doesn't cover in the video is the conditions for regression. So let's cover it right here. So when you do a regression, what are the 5 conditions? When you do a regression, what 4 conditions? I said 5 by accident, I think. What are the 4 conditions for regression? What are your 4 conditions? Oh, thank you, Olivia. Olivia, let's throw Olivia 1,000 points. Those are really great comments, Olivia. What are the 4 conditions? And let's talk about them. What are the 4 conditions? We need to know the 4 conditions. We need to memorize them. Q, Q, ba, 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 ba. Oh, I didn't show how to add the residual plot? Oh, no. I'll show that here, too. Q, Q, straight enough. No outliers. Plot doesn't thicken. Plot doesn't thicken. So I think the notes say plot thickens. I like to say plot doesn't thicken because then you can say yes to them. Like, is it 2 quantitative variables? Yes. Is it straight enough? Yes. Are there no outliers? Yes. Does the plot not thicken? Yes. Great job, Kira, there also. So this is a regression plot right here. This is a residual plot, and I'll show how to make the residual plot too. When you look at a regression plot, all regression plots or all scatter plots are going to have 2 quantitative variables. Drop and speed are 2 quantitative variables. So it literally has to be that if it's a scatter plot. So is this 2 quantitative variables? Yes, because drop and speed are both quantitative variables. So next we fit the line to it, and you see me do that right here. Fit the line. So now you see, there's the line fit right there. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a bend and a little bit of outliers right here. You want to screenshot this plot. So that plot up there, this output right here I'd screenshot, this output down here. So you pretty much need everything here. You could do separate screenshots. I've got the things closed off you don't need the lack of fit. You don't need the analysis of variance. Everything on this screen, the scatter plot with the line, the regression equation, the summary of the fit, including the R-squared and the number of observations is about all we cover in this class. More to cover if we talk more topics. And then these are the parameter estimates down below with the uncertainties, the t's, and the p-values. But everything in this output right here, you do not need lack of fit. You do not need ANOVA. Those would be the 2 things you don't need. People were mentioning how to get the residuals. If you go right here to this button, I can't touch it, it's in the void, but that, well, do it in 2 seconds. Where's camera green screen? Would point directly to it. Where am I? Here we go. Whee! This button right here. Click, can be the plot all the way down from estimates? Yes. This button right here, do you see that red arrow? That red arrow, click it, and it'll say plot residuals. Plot residuals. Take the first residual plot. You don't need them all, just the first residual plot. Did everyone hear that? That button right there, click that, and then plot residuals. Does that make sense? That button right there. I might even make my... Now I can reach a little further off the screen. So that button, oh my gosh, I can reach it. Right there. Hey, Emma, good to see you here. So click that button right there, and then plot residuals. And then I think we know what needs to be in the screenshots. You don't need the lack of fit. You don't need the analysis of variance. I'd include the parameter estimates, do the plot all the way down to parameter estimates. Yes, you could do that as your screenshot. Don't include the lack of it. Don't include the analysis of variance, the ANOVA. What else? What else? Trying to think what other questions are there. That's where to get your residual plot from. Watch the full video right here. I'll drop the link in the chat. Now that you what, Brian? What? How do you make the write-up not look like 4 bullet points? Oh, you can do that right there. Does it say don't use bullet points? Does it say don't use bullet points? You can use bullet points. You could do this. If you want to talk about QQ straight enough, no outliers, You could be like two quantitative variables, because we want to tell someone what it is. Quantitative variables. And then you could say like pass, and then you could say, we'll do a dash, because, and you could give your reasoning. You could make this bold right here. You could make this bold right here. So it passes the two quantitative variables, or you could put right here. Maybe it'll look better if I do it like, I mean, it's however you want it to look. Just thinking stylistically, you could put it right there like that. So there we go. Does that make sense? This is maybe the way I'd format mine. Two quantitative variables it passes, and then give it the reasoning. Should we not include the question on the write-up? I probably wouldn't include questions because it's more like a business report. So I'd make it look more like a business report. Two quantitative variables, it passes this because, and I'd explain my variables are quantitative. I'd name the variables. The more specific you are, the better. I'd do full sentences. I'd write full sentences right here because it's like a business report. You want to fully explain in words, fully what's going on, why it's two quantitative variables, like clearly name the variables. Like for mine, I might not say too, I don't want everyone to copy exactly what I say. I'm always a little bit worried about that because I don't want to have any plagiarism issues. Like for me, I would say this is clearly two quantitative variables because this is a scatter plot and the variables that create it, drop and speed, are quantitative. And the condition states we need two quantitative variables. Yes, I said everything that could be said really because a scatter plot comes from two quantitative variables and drop and speed are two quantitative variables as seen by the dataset. And we know that a scatter plot is two quantitative variables. So do we meet QQ? We definitely do. Does that make sense right there? This one looks to suffer from a little bit of nonlinearity and not really outliers. I see some bend to the model. Within here, kind of bends a little bit-ish of outliers around the 130 mark, 140 mark on the drop, some high outliers, and then maybe it's a little heteroscedastic or there's a little bit of plot thickening towards the middle where the model gets weaker. Does that make sense? So hear me talk. I'm going to talk through this one with the conditions here. I can zoom in if I do this. You ready? Is that? It's not the best. Let's end with this. I'm going to do a regression over here in jump. I'm going to end with a regression. I'm going to talk through the conditions to make it very clear. And so file, new data table. I might try those. Okay. All right, let's just go here and go to age. I'm making up fake data. GPA. I know how to make it better in R. Random ages. Oh no, we don't want that. Okay. Don't worry that the numbers are ridiculous. Whoa! Oh my gosh. That is, if I've ever seen that, that is a oh, you can't see it because I'm zoomed in. That is a non-linear relationship with the way this bends. I mean, those are kind of outliers, also indication of non-linearity. So fit line right here. Look at how the line does not go through the data. Ooh, that is not so much outliers here. It's a non-linear nature to it. And you know what? The residual plot is even going to show that better. So here's how you get plot residuals. It's the first one right here. The line is now the blue thing because remember the line becomes flat. We talked a lot about that. So this residual plot right here really shows that the points are bending around it. This is the one you would take from your residual plot if you're wondering. So there's a huge aspect of non-linearity to this plot. That's the major issue. Age and GPA are both quantitative variables. The model does not look to be straight enough because there's a bend to the data. The line does not go through the middle of the data. You know, as we can see where the points start out above, then below, then above, that's indicative of a bend. It seems to me that there's about equal thickness throughout here through the model. So there's not an issue with plot thickening. I don't think there's extreme outliers. This is not really a symptom of outliers. The points at the end around 31 or whatever, that's a symptom of the non-linearity. Fitting 8, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. What am I saying? Who's listening? Don't do this. Don't do this. Anyone hear that for some points? For 1,000 points. I'm pausing before I don't do this because the grader's going to wonder what you're doing. Fitting a higher degree polynomial model. Don't do this. I want people to type in the chat. Fitting a higher degree polynomial. Oof. That really bends low there. I don't want that. I guess it's figuring out. I mean, that's got an R-squared of 85.7. How's the lack of fit do on that? Well, it doesn't have a lack of fit. It's actually saying it's the right fit. Yeah, okay. Polynomial comes back as the good relationship, has a much higher R-squared, and it looks to be, the residuals for this are probably good now. The residuals probably are randomly above and below the polynomial model. And yes, the residuals, they still have a little bit of weirdness, but not as much. Notice that the residuals look to be more random, which is the residuals should show, and for one last 1,000 points, the residuals should show, don't worry, it's a polynomial model, but the residuals should show no what? Think of a P word, which I really don't see much of one. It's harder to see one in this than it was previously. The residuals, and you should know this for your test, not for polynomial models though, residuals should show no pattern. Great job, William, right there. The residuals should look random. So with that, I played that too long. One time we got in trouble, we just jammed out to it. The residuals should show no pattern. They should look pretty random. These look a lot more random. The R-squared has increased because the polynomial model is a better fit. But yeah, that's how we would deal with these things because there's ways to fix all problems with statistics, ways to handle them, and then ways to test to see if your solutions are good. With that, bye for now, everyone. Bye! 5 hours. We've almost got these new intros ready. We're almost there.
This has been going for like 20 hours. This ends now.